Hey, everybody, and welcome to another edition of New York Sports Rehab, New York Ranger style. And to some degree, this morning it's New York Ranger Rehab. If I look like I had a rough night, well, I did. I stayed up and I watched all three overtime periods of the Ranger game. Was on my feet for most of them, screaming, cursing, throwing things, you name it. It was like yesterday, going back to 2017, the last time the Rangers had been in the playoffs prior. If you forgot what playoff hockey was like, you were quickly reminded yesterday. The crowd at Madison Square Garden was electric. The team was electric. They came out flying. They were hitting everything that moved, and they took a 2-0 lead against Pittsburgh into the second period, and it looked like the Rangers were going to blow Pittsburgh out of the building. But lo and behold, you got to hand it to Pittsburgh. They were a veteran team. You know, they've got Crosby, Malkin, Letang. They've been there before. They're a perennial playoff team just about every year. And they put it together. They came back. They dominated. They outshot the Rangers in period two, I believe, 25-8. And they took a 3-2 lead. But the true character of the Rangers came back as they tied the game in the third period. The third period was kind of nip and tuck. Neither team really looking to make that mistake that might cost them, but the Rangers came back and tied it. And then the turning point of the game was the Rangers looked like they had the game won. They scored a late third period goal set up by Capo Caco, but Pittsburgh challenged it. They challenged on the claim of goalie interference, and the goal was disallowed, and that took us into overtime. And maybe I'm biased because I am a Ranger fan, but I don't see how, in any way, shape, or form, you take that goal away. It's a judgment call, but you're looking at this replay, and Caco Capo was definitely, or Capo Caco rather, was definitely hit from behind. There was contact. He did not purposely go into the goalie. His momentum's taking him forward. He's got a Pittsburgh defender hitting him from behind. There was contact. The puck was then kicked out to, I believe it was Philip Hedl, who scored what looked like would be possibly the Rangers' winning goal. But upon further review, it was overturned. And of course, you hear in the conspiracy theories that, the powers that be want the Rangers to lose, or they want the veteran Pittsburgh team with Sidney Crosby to move on. And I don't believe that's the case at all. I just think that it was a bad call. I just don't. I mean, if you probably review that 10 times, probably at least 50% go in the Rangers' favor, and it's not overturned. I mean, to me, there's got to be clearly no contact whatsoever on that play for it to be overturned. And I hate when games are decided in any sport by the officials. And last night, that's exactly what happened. And to me, you're in a playoff game. There's contact. If it can go either way and the goal had originally counted, well, then you let the goal stand. Had they rejected it right from the start, maybe you could give the argument there wasn't enough to overturn it, but it was called a goal. And given the fact that it was that tight and that close a call in a playoff game, the goal should have stood and the Rangers would have had a 4-3 lead. But that's not what happened. The game goes into overtime. It's nip and tuck. You could see at that point both teams were visibly tired, skating at what appeared to be like 50% of how they started out. You can understand that with all, almost basically played two games in one day is what it was. And it was a nip and tuck type of game situation. The Rangers had numerous opportunities to win in overtime. The Penguins had a few as well. Shesterkin came up several times big. I tell you what, the Pittsburgh goaltending, which I thought was going to be, at least in game one, that would be result in the Rangers' biggest advantage. They played great. I never heard of Casey DeSmith before. He came out as the Pittsburgh goalie. He played great. Then lo and behold, in overtime, in the second overtime, I believe, he gets injured, and they bring in somebody by the name of Louis Domingue, who I've never heard of. And this guy's been basically sitting on his butt on the bench for 4 hours and comes in, and he stops everything that comes his way. And I'm screaming at the TV, the Rangers just pepper the goalie with shots, which they were trying to do, and he stopped everything. And as the hockey gods would have it, our all-world goalie got beat on a deflection in triple overtime. It happens. He had been playing great. It stopped probably 70 shots on goal when one got in. And I've said this before, the fine line between winning and losing a hockey game is so narrow, is so thin. And that's basically what happened, last night. Both teams played hard. Both teams had their opportunities. Both teams were hitting, in particular the Rangers. You got a backup goalie who's not even in the league right now in Domingue if all of Pittsburgh's other goaltenders are healthy, and he ends up on the victorious side of the win instead of Igor Shesterkin, because that's the difference sometimes between an all-world goalie and a third-string goalie. In hockey, it's so hard to predict sometimes the outcome of a game, unless, of course, you root for the Colorado Avalanche, who look like they're in another league above everybody else. They just roll over everybody, 6-7 goals a game. I've never seen anything like it. But otherwise, there's such a fine line. So the Rangers lose a crusher. It was entertaining. It got you right back into playoff hockey. It got you back into that feel of what it's like to be standing on the edge of your seat throughout an entire game. And now, as a Ranger fan, your biggest concern has got to be is to carry over into the rest of the series, into game two. More than anything, the psychological carryover. Physically, I think the Rangers will be fine. They're a young team. They'll come back on Thursday. They got a day of rest today. If anything, it should affect Pittsburgh more physically because they're the older team. But the Rangers being young, most of these guys playing in the playoffs for the first time, losing a crusher like that, how will it affect them psychologically going forward? You got to let it go. I know it's easier said than done. You got to forget about it. It's just a loss is a loss either way. And you got to go out there and come out hard again on Thursday. And now you got to come out there and even up the series, because you don't want to go back to Pittsburgh down 0-2. And that's really your only focus, is going back and winning one game right now. Winning on Thursday, forgetting about everything else, and just going out there and getting a split. And if you can do that, you go back and you're looking fine right now. More than likely, the Rangers, again, at least on paper, will have the advantage in goal, whether it's going to be DeSmith or Domingue, either one of those guys. You got to figure the Rangers have an advantage with Shesterkin in goal. Hopefully, he'll be fine after being out there for basically almost 6 periods of hockey. But to me, I still think, it's the Rangers series more or less to lose because of the goaltending situation. But the Rangers got to shake this off. That's my biggest worry, is that this loss affects them. And we'll go back and say after that game 1 triple overtime crusher, the Rangers were never the same. Hopefully that's not going to happen. They're well coached. That's how they got this far. And so hopefully they'll bounce back Thursday and even up the series. It's a great season either way. The Rangers made the playoffs. They weren't expected to. They won 52 games. They they tallied over 100 points as a team. They had 4 players with over 70 points. They weren't supposed to be here. But if they can win at least one series this year, it'll be the icing on the cake. And it helps that much more in gaining experience going forward. Most of these guys playing in the playoffs for the very first time. So the future is still bright for the Rangers, but it was a crusher, and it was disappointing. And we'd be talking about one of the best Ranger games of all time postseason had they won that game yesterday. But like I said, that fine line in hockey between winning and losing is sometimes just paper thin. That's the difference between celebrating greatness today and being, more or less devastated, at least from a hockey standpoint. So we'll be back Friday. Hopefully we'll have a happy recap as the Rangers go out there and hopefully even up the series. But playoff hockey is back. The excitement is back. It was electric at the Garden. I wish I was there waving those white towels as well. And if you're a Ranger fan and you were watching it on TV, I'm sure you were thinking the same thing. So that's Rangers hockey. Crusher, we lose in overtime 4-3. Rangers will bounce back Thursday, and hopefully we'll be back Friday and have that happy Rangers roar recap. I'm Mike, and I'm out.